Well, hello and welcome to Working Lunch, the Chamber's weekly series where we talk with community leaders, getting to know the person behind the work and the interesting things they are working on. I'm Jim D'Antona, CEO of the San Luis Chamber, and today we'll be having a conversation with photographer and activist Renoda Campbell. Renoda is a wedding photographer based out of San Luis Obispo, owner of Renoda Campbell Events and Photography. She's a storyteller who strives to bring diverse narratives to life through photojournalism. Campbell is passionate about portraying the love between all couples, displaying their respect for one another in portraits, and specifically works with the LGBTQ plus couples, BIPOC couples, and couples who believe in being part of an inclusive community. A longtime Central Coast resident, Campbell has years of experience working for both Cal Poly and Cuesta College. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication arts from Loyola Marymount University and a master's degree in education from Cal Poly. And I must mention, especially since leadership is out for recruitment for class 30, a graduate of leadership SLO class 13. I'm so looking forward to talking with Renoda about what led to her activism and social justice work and what it's like being an inclusive photographer and how the events industry has morphed over the last year. Renoda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as we get started, just as folks sit down to lunch, where are you zooming in from today?
I'm zooming in from my house, so I get to work remotely, and I am off today from my Cuesta position, so I'm getting ready for weddings this weekend.
Well, that sounds like a lot of work, but so we appreciate you being here today. I always like to start by learning a little bit more about how people came to be in SLO. Were you born and raised here, or did you find SLO by some other circuitous path?
I am originally from Los Angeles, and all of my family, my immediate family, are from LA. My husband lived in Monterey once his parents returned from England. His father was in the military. And Chris always wanted to move back to a small town. And so I thought, you know, a suburb of LA would be fine with me, but he actually really meant small. So I figured, working in the music industry, we would live in Santa Barbara and I would commute that way. But unfortunately, from a housing perspective, that didn't work out, and we moved to San Luis Obispo.
Wow. Oh, yes, that is. You definitely went from big town to small town there. When you were in Los Angeles, you said a little bit about, you know, being in the music industry. What were you doing down there?
For 15 years prior to moving to San Luis Obispo, I worked at Warner Brothers Records for 4 years. Was really into the working with new wave artists, if you know who new wave artists are. And then I started working at a music management company in which we represented the B-52s, Brian Ferry, OMD, Seal, a lot of the more new age groups, as well as Counting Crows, who some of you may know.
That's pretty fun. And, you know, again, as you had to say there, is what new wave, like, have we gotten to that part of our life where you have to explain what new wave was?
People don't know. People don't know what new wave is. So the B-52s, Love Shack Baby, that might be a band that you know. So.
Oh, yeah. And it's, again, that was our era. So I get that. So it sounds like you were kind of steeped in the arts down there and now here. Do you come from a creative family, or are you an outlier?
No, my parents were definitely creative. My father was also a photographer, so he always had a camera around his neck, even though he never charged. He just took pictures of everyone and gave them everything. And my mom was an amazing cook and baker. So unfortunately, I'm a terrible cook because she always cooked for me. But and I have an older sister that is a well-known artist in the LA area for quilting as well as mixed media.
Wow, that sounds exciting for all the work you're doing, and a really exciting family. And again, sounds like that is part of being part of your family. So that's amazing. I would assume back when you moved here, there obviously wasn't really a lot of remote work like we have now, and that line of work that you were in was not prevalent here in SLO. Is that the case?
Correct. I really had to reinvent myself coming here. Unfortunately, my supervisors, who were absolutely amazing, said that if you can't stay in Los Angeles, you can't have this work with us anymore. The artists that I would have represented lived all around the United States and Canada, but they wanted the hub to be in Los Angeles. So I had to reinvent myself.
Well, and it would probably be all the way through, March 2020. Everybody thought the idea was you had to be in the place where you were going to do your work.
Right.
There wasn't this other option, but amazing to think in your previous work, you must have, though, had to go other places to do all your work, right?
Actually, I traveled 85,000 air flight miles a year, being on tour, visiting clients, organizing their schedules, their writing times, meeting with other bands that wanted to collaborate. REM was really big at the time with the B-52. So when Kate Pearson had to do Shiny Happy People, working through that, being on various shows, The Tonight Show. So organizing all that, and it was a lot, but it was so fun.
It's like we need to do a whole program just on your previous music career. That's amazing. That's so fun. But as you're obviously saying, like, you obviously had to adjust your professional life once you got here. What was that next step for you in trying to reinvent yourself?
Well, my husband was really funny because he had already received his LMFT license, and he said, "You know what? You have been counseling bands for 15 years. You should just go get a counseling degree." And being that stubborn person, it's like, "Don't tell me what to do. I will do whatever." And guess what I did? I went to Cal Poly and I got a master's in counseling. So it was absolutely what I needed, and it fit well within the next step of my career.
Well, and looking at that, how long did it take to you to kind of find that once you got here? Was that something you did right away, or were you still trying to find that what was going to be that next step?
Oh no, it definitely took me a while. It took me, I received my degree in 2005, so 7 years. Um, before I did that, because and I also had young children. So it was a matter of trying to work within their schedules, work within his schedule, and then my job. And so from 2003 to 2005 is when I earned my master's degree.
Well, it's so fabulous. But one of the things that, it's not an uncommon story for people with a diverse background, giving up on SLO and going back to or moving out of the area because there just isn't that connection. What kept you in the community?
I have to be honest. If I wasn't married and had children, I definitely would have moved back to Los Angeles and continued that music career. But because my husband liked the area so much and the kids were starting to really adapt and have friends and to really become incorporated into the city is what made me stay. So I unfortunately was a little miserable for a while, but now I can't see myself being I'd love to visit Los Angeles, but I don't really consider it home anymore.
And it's, thinking about that story, it's definitely something that is playing out bigger and bigger in our community as, diverse people come to this community and trying to make their way. We've obviously at the Chamber want to make a big point about what we have to do to make that, to fix that problem. And I wanted to ask you, so once you got the counseling degree, where did that lead you? What was the next step for you in utilizing that degree?
Well, I always wanted to work in higher education. And so working at Cal Poly, one of the prerequisites or one of the preferred prerequisites is having a master's degree. And with the positions that I wanted at Cuesta, you also needed to have that master's degree. I did work at Cuesta before I got the master's in the math department as a division assistant, but I wanted to do more academic advising and working with students in that way. So it did require a postgraduate degree.
So besides being a student at Cal Poly, did you end up working, get a job there at Cal Poly?
I did. So I interned at Cal Poly during my graduate work, and then student affairs really just grabbed me. And so I started interning in the student affairs department in what is now called the Dean of Students office. It was called Student Life and Leadership at the time. And I was able to work in the Multicultural Center and in Greek life with Greek life students as an intern. And then there was an open position in the Multicultural Center, and I became the coordinator of multicultural programs, attempting to bring diversity programs to the student body.
And did you start out with that idea from that counseling spot as a way to work on and focus on your work on diversity, or was that, through the lived experience that you saw that this was something that was missing, or both?
I definitely saw that there was something missing here in San Luis Obispo. When you look at and you see that the population of African Americans is 1% to 2%, and the same for Cal Poly, I wanted to attempt to bring a sense of belonging to the community. And I mean, it's a lot better now than it was in 1998 when I started, or no, I started in 2006, sorry, in 2006. But having, how are students finding their communities, and working in the Multicultural Center definitely gave me that option to offer students different options. And a lot of students actually were going home. They were driving 2 to 3 hours to go home to visit family and friends. And then with the Multicultural Center, we tried to be that family, be that support, so that they didn't have to go home as often. Their grades improved, and they felt that they had more of a community here, as well as going to whatever their original locations were.
Well, that must have been pretty special in terms of making connections with those who probably didn't feel connected, and really building relationships. Was that a part of what you were doing there?
Definitely, definitely. And the African American community at Cal Poly was just so small. And so working along with the other, students of color, it just really created a great opportunity to get to know other students, learn from other students, and then that also brought in some of the other clubs and organizations, and the Caucasian students as well. So it really became a family.
That's awesome. Well, and as I was alluding to in your in the opening, was most people know you as kind of the photographer, but obviously some of your past work there. But before we got to that, I wanted to talk about your work. You talked about Cuesta College. And you do work at the California Men's Colony. Is that correct? How'd that come to be?
That is correct. Unfortunately, I decided to go full time as a photographer in November of 2019. So, and with COVID coming about, it was not quite successful for me to do that. So I really felt that I needed to find something so that I could generate income for my family. And so I resorted back to higher education. Cuesta luckily had a part-time advisor position available. I didn't know where. Cuesta has 4 sites. So they have the San Luis Obispo campus, the Paso Robles campus, the South County campus, and I didn't know, CMC. So in the interview, they asked if there was a particular site that you were more interested in or did not want to participate. And there was one that I said that I didn't want to. And I ended up getting CMC, which made me so happy because that was one of my choices. And so working with these men of color, most of them are men of color, it just continued my work, working in diversity initiatives, and it also strengthened the advocacy for incarcerated students.
Well, I wonder if you'd be able to share some of the issues you're tackling with the inmates to kind of prepare them for life after CMC.
Well, one of the most difficult things right now is there is no online presence at CMC. So when you think of everything outside of prison, you have to do online forms, your emails, you're on Zooms, you're on all these things. Men that have been in prison for 10 to 15 years have no idea and don't understand the concepts of what these are. So that's the biggest issue that I see is technology and having them understand that. One of the questions that I received was, how do I know that the internet won't take my information and use it for bad? And it's true. I mean, if you haven't worked with this for 15, in this particular arena for 15 years, you could be very skeptical. And so having them become familiar with online classes to continue their education, et cetera, has really been a challenge. So one of the things that I would like to see is like a small workshop on, what to do or what to expect when you get out. And that is not something that no one is doing right now, at least in San Luis Obispo, but that would be something that I would like to see, so that they are, that they can continue to be successful in their educational prospects.
Right. Well, I think that's one of those key pieces where, there is a societal idea about not why do this for our inmates, but these people come out, and if they're not prepared and they're not, then the recidivism rate has to grow. So I think it's amazing to see that Cuesta and the work you're doing to try and get people ready for that. And, hopefully you're seeing some success with those things.
I am, and the faculty and the CMC staff that have worked with me have really been amazing. I mean, I can tell you that the grade point averages of these men are very, very high. They're really bright. And once they start doing the educational components, they love it and they want to continue with it. And I think that's really important.
I really appreciate that work. It's really amazing, and that you and Cuesta and other, I'm sure, community colleges around the state.
Mm-hmm. All of them actually try to work. Even Ellen Hancock works with the federal prison. So
very, very interesting information. So I'm going to jump to something a little bit off from there. Is it true that you were in the famous or infamous, to residents of SLO, Oprah Winfrey Happiest City in America video?
I was. Oh my gosh, that was 10 years ago. I can't believe it was that long ago. But Michael Gunther and I are alums of Loyola Marymount University. And I think I don't know if he pitched it to Oprah or who pitched it, but Michael Gunther recommended me as referred me as one of the people that the Oprah production company should speak with about San Luis Obispo, because I was working in diversity initiatives. Unfortunately, it didn't really go much into that. It was more about my family. But Beth Marino, myself, and Michael Gunther were those locals who were able to talk about San Luis Obispo.
It's so funny. I got a chance after.
Did you see it? Did you watch it?
I did watch it. It was so fun. And again, yes, it was interesting to hear from, I think they were trying to get the locals who weren't born and raised here from the other perspective. So a great choice, because even here we are 10 years later, and your story still holding, and you get to be forever in that the Oprah Winfrey video.
Yes, that's one of my two truths and a lie. I can honestly say I was on the last season of Oprah Winfrey. So
that's amazing. So going into your photography background, we heard that you got your start in sports photography. Is that correct?
My parents were huge sports fanatics. And so they, living in Los Angeles, I was always at a Dodger game, even though I wasn't that big of a baseball fan, but I loved the energy, surrounded by the energy. And my parents were huge Laker supporters. So when I came here, my daughters were very involved in sports. One was in cheerleading and tumbling. So it's not just the traditional rah-rah. It was one that does 6, back handsprings. And trying to capture that was always a challenge. And then my other daughter was in basketball. But one thing I noticed in San Luis Obispo is there were always sports photographers at the male games, none at the female games. So I thought, you know what, I want to be that photographer for the ladies. And I submitted my photos for yearbooks so that, they had those images, not just parent images or images from the yearbook editor. And so that got me started doing that. And I still love it. The last thing that I did actually in thinking about this particular question was, I don't know if you remember in 2019, right before COVID, there was the US qualifier for the pentathlon multisport. So it's swimming, fencing, equestrian, laser, and run. And I was asked to photograph the female component of the multisport. And just FYI, KSBY covered the male, not the female sections.
That is the story about the photography, and obviously now even the coverage is so disturbing, especially when we have such amazing women athletes. You look at the women's national soccer team, you look at the amazing gymnasts we have, and those things are happening at all different sport levels. that are just not getting covered. So it's so interesting to hear about, not even at the photography level was it happening.
And the young lady that did go to the Olympics, I think there was a lot of press, who was a fencer here in the community. She was actually one of the ones at the pentathlon.
That's really incredible. Yeah, great experiences. But so was that a impetus from that sports kind of doing some of that to wedding, or was wedding always on the list to eventually get to?
No, actually, I had a friend of mine ask me to photograph their wedding, and I thought, no, I am not doing weddings. I will never do weddings. I won't deal with bridezillas. I don't, la, 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 la. But when I actually attended the wedding as a photographer, and I saw the love between the couple, between the family and the friends for that couple, I was hooked. I was hooked. There's so much negativity in the world right now, and to see people come together for something so positive and so good. I am a positive person, and I just love being around positive energy, and being at a wedding. Everyone's just so happy and so proud of the couple committing themselves to one another. So I'm hooked now.
That's really a beautiful discussion of it, because when you look at your website thinking about your business, you have such inclusive messaging, really celebrating it. Do you think couples find you because you are so open and upfront with that?
I do, and I've actually asked couples that very question, because I don't think I'm, insofar as an SEO perspective, I'm, not on page 1 or anything like that yet. But they have stated that because of the written text that I write, as well as the images, it reinforces that I am one who is an advocate. There are a lot of photographers out there that are advocates, but not showing LGBTQ or couples of color in any of their galleries or in their messaging. It makes people think, okay, maybe they're not as serious as we thought they were, and they'll go on to the next photographer.
Well, and we've seen you talked about it with your work to get to Cuesta, is such major impacts to the wedding industry these past 18 months. Are we seeing things return to normal, or how's it different today?
Well, right now, vendors feel like they're drinking out of a fire hose. It is really crazy. I actually have a wedding in October on a Monday, because this particular venue was so busy. So it is just extremely busy, and vendors want to accommodate every couple that wants to get married. So because there was because their salaries and their fees were non-existent in 2020, people are taking on as much as they possibly can. So I'm concerned about burnout with the vendors, because they are trying to do that and make up as much money as they can to recoup their losses. But that would be the biggest thing that I would be concerned about. I think it is going to come back and level off and be normal again. Just right now, it's absolutely bonkers, but that's okay. That's okay. We're like, we need to make money. We have to, we have to support our families. So we'll do it.
Well, and I would just imagine right now what we're seeing is that dam releasing all that water that was held for 18 months. Plus, now you have people who are in their normal time frame. We're going to do that. So you're doubling up all this. And I guess the vendors are taking everything they can get for that same, huh?
Correct. There's, I think there's one vendor that normally does, I think maybe 40 weddings a year. And I think this year she's doing 73. So yeah, it's a lot, but we want people to be married. We want people to be happy and start their lives. And, this is our way of bringing that to them.
It certainly was one of the saddest parts of watching, we all had trials and tribulations through COVID, but watching the couples who were planning to get married and celebrate those things put off, definitely feels that it's nice to see it kind of come back. As you look now, back, and are there any silver linings or things you took away from the past 18 months that you hope to make permanent in your work or life?
Yes, definitely. I am a huge supporter of intimate weddings. So weddings that are less than 75, so that you are having the core people that love you there, and all the rest, it's nice to send them announcements, but the intimate weddings versus the larger weddings, I really prefer the intimate weddings. Another thing that I see is live streaming. So people have realized that because, you know, not everyone's going to be there. So live streaming is definitely something that I see that's definitely going to stay, especially for, you know, those older individuals that aren't able to fly to a particular place. Another thing is seeing more LGBTQ and BIPOC couples of color represented in more traditional magazines, and not just the traditional bride. And couples really caring about the experience. So if there is a destination that they want to get married, going to that destination and live streaming, like I said. I'm actually going to be photographing a couple that are in Houston right now. So they'll be flying in as a destination wedding to San Luis Obispo, but I believe they could potentially be live streaming so that, you know, their friends in Houston who aren't able to make it could enjoy their happiness.
Yeah, I would imagine that, you know, especially international travel, like folks with people in other places would have to do these things in order to include folks who just can't be here. Is that
And that wasn't
happening?
an option. Yeah, that wasn't an option before.
And looking at it, has SLO seen, in your opinion, an uptick in some of those inclusive weddings and looking for the LGBTQ plus and BIPOC communities coming to this area?
I haven't really seen that many couples of color per se, but the LGBTQ community definitely, it's definitely spiked up, which makes me really happy. And to be able to see on Instagram and Facebook other photographers that are photographing LGBTQ couples as well has really been inspiring to me. So I would love to be their photographer, but if, you know, there are other photographers in the community that are also doing it, I think that's great. But we just need to make sure that those voices get out there and they're spotlighted, highlighted.
Yeah, and I think the more that we have these, that the more welcoming, again, our community can be and celebrating all of these pieces. So as you look to the future of your work, we talked about kind of streaming options. Are there technical changes in how photography is done, how it's shared? I know when I got married, I have a big photo book, like album, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure they do that anymore, or is everything shared digitally? How does that kind of?
Oh my goodness, yes. The biggest thing that photographers want you to do is to have the albums, because a lot of time media changes. So you had beta, you had VHS, you had DVDs, and those are all gone now, but your album that you have is still with you, and it still, you know, brings back those memories. So yes, photographers definitely encourage couples to get those books. The biggest thing that I see is technology. So videography, especially with TikTok, Instagram Reels, you know, all that, people are asking for more video now. So those that are interested, that's a definite opportunity. If that's something that you enjoy, is, you know, especially drones. Drones are huge. I received a request asking if I do drone photography, and I don't. So, and that's all they were looking for. They weren't looking for a photographer. So, I mean, a still photographer per se. They wanted someone that'll do drones, but you have to be careful if you're near an airport, like around here, you have to get permission.
It's interesting. I can imagine how that'd be exciting to get the big upside view of it. Pretty interesting stuff. So I can't believe we're already into the 30 minutes of our conversation. I do want to make sure people can learn more about Renoda Campbell Photography. Where should they go to connect with you and your team?
They should connect with me on my website, which is photosbyrc.com. And I'm also on Instagram at RenodaCampbellPhoto.com. I mean, Renoda Campbell Photo. Sorry.
It's natural to throw the .com on there.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that.
Well, we'll add that into the chat here below. So if you want to click over, feel free to use that. And we like to end our conversations every week with a question of, what are you looking forward to this weekend, especially as you were talking about having these weddings?
Well, I have a great rehearsal dinner that I'm going to photograph tonight in Paso Robles, and then I have a big wedding at one of the wineries tomorrow. So, and it's for a couple. It's a destination wedding, so they're both from the Bay Area, and they love this community. They love the wineries, and so they're getting married at one of their favorite wineries.
And I'm sure you get to see a ton of places you wouldn't normally find because others are finding these places that you get to be a part of.
Exactly, exactly. And I consider myself one who knows a lot about San Luis Obispo County, but because of private residences and all the different wineries, which I haven't, gone to yet as just a participant, it's really been amazing to learn the community all the way from Santa Ynez to San Miguel.
Well, Renata, thank you so much for joining us today. And I was, blown away by, looking at your photography and the artistic abilities you got. I appreciate you sharing your story with us and the audience.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I appreciate it.
As always, if you have questions for our guests, feel free to add them into the Facebook comments below, and Renata will hop on and try to get to them when she gets a moment. For everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you next Friday at noon for another Working Lunch. Have a wonderful weekend. Please stay healthy and safe out there.